Ta-da. Quadrant 4, the business analysis. Remember I said earlier, this is probably the one that resonates most with product folks, with organizations. It's the easiest from the point of view of understanding, I think. It's probably not the easiest from an execution perspective. Well, they're all tough from an execution perspective. So this is about, think of it as quadrant 4 is the business analysis quadrant. I just use that term. Don't get triggered by any of my terms. You should be defining the quadrants for yourself under the banner. So there should be no triggering. This is the requirements, the ask. It's about personas, and I'm going to emphasize that. It's not just about user stories, but are you establishing personas of client targets? It is also about the land of acceptance criteria for the stories, and you all know that. Many definitions have done on a story basis, or a feature basis, or an epic basis. I consider it the land of done and ready. Definition of done, definition of ready. To me, those are pretty powerful sort of constraints to give to the team. This is also the land of look ahead, not look ahead at a planning level, but physical look ahead and user story spikes, if you've heard of that, like planning spikes, executing spikes, articulating bright spikes, architectural spikes, feature exploration spikes. As an aside, I don't see enough spiking in the world. It's been a problem for the last 10 years when I look at backlogs. I think it's getting a little better, but there's still, I think, a reluctance in most teams to spike. To me, a spike is a promise to figure things out before we write stories. And I think there's just a lot of pressure or an inclination in the part of teams not to say they don't know, and they wing it. I wish there was more. It's a way of de-risking. If you remember when I said threads through the tapestry before, one way to detect risk from my point of view is what is the spiking pattern that's happening or not. If I see a new product being developed and there's no spikes, to me, that's a high risk product because again, the team is just, being presumptuous that they know everything and they're diving in and they're going to derail themselves in the execution. It's sort of pay me now, pay me later. Confirmation and sign off. And then back, this is also the land of being really active and healthy and dynamic in backlog refinement, clarification, prioritization, slicing. I hope that you're looking at refinement as less of an estimation exercise and more of a conversational understanding, clarification, design, nuance exercise. If your backlog refinement is mostly argumentative and debating like 3 points versus 5 points or something like that, it's in my view, it's focusing on the minutia, which is time, and really you should be focusing on that vibrant discussion across the entire team. And vibrant discussion does not have to take a long time. Not rushing, and this is what I'm talking about. So a part of quadrant 4 is allowing time for emergence, writing stories at 20% clarity, not overwriting your stories. You don't have to define everything in your story. Stories are a promise to have discovery in the sprint. You should actually be clarifying your stories in the sprint. There's different schools of thought as to what the percentage is, but a lot of people think like 50% of the clarity of the story should emerge in the sprint. That says that there was a lot of ambiguity and unknowns, which is absolutely the intent. And we discovered that in sprint planning and in the sprint itself. Effectively look ahead. Like I said, making sure you have research spikes and things, and a willingness to accept pivoting. So allowing, expecting, don't rush. Don't try to rush. It's not a feature game. It's a get it right game. It's a do it well. It's figure out the direction. So really allowing yourself some space. I said this earlier, and I want to emphasize it. Storytelling from a leadership perspective. This is storytelling from a backlog point of view, from a user story point of view. The original intent, I don't know if everyone knows it, but the original intent of the user story was not as a requirement artifact. The original intent was an artifact placeholder that induced conversation amongst the team. It was a conversation instigator as opposed to a piece of paper to do traceability on. I'm not de-emphasizing. What happened over time in Agile is we've emphasized the architect the artifact, and we've lost the intent of having conversation. And what I'm saying here is in this quadrant as a product owner, you want to empower, enable, encourage, and participate in conversation around the stories. Almost thinking of as around the campfire conversations, where the team is you and the team are exploring what's possible. The words to sort of emerge that kind of conversation. You can check me on it, but that's the intent from XP. And I think we've evolved way too far into it's just a requirement, and that's unhealthy. I think so. Consider running some experiments where you empower the team to do less writing and more collaboration. So now what I want you to do is I'm going to give you a minute and a half, a little bit more time. I want you to do the same thing for quadrant 4. Define the activities that you spend in quadrant 4. Identify any gaps that I inspired in you. Hey, we should be doing more spiking. So that's a gap. And then what is the percentage of time? So each quadrant, you put a percentage of time that you're spending in. Then the second part of my ask is I want you to look at all 4 quadrants, and I want you to now balance them and ask yourself questions like, this is where we're spending our time. Where should we spending? And should we be shifting our time allotment? Everyone with me? So you're going to load balance a little bit and be honest. Don't balance to 100% if you're spending 140% there. Articulate the 140%. And what that says is you're overloaded. You need help. So, or as an organization, you're overloading yourselves. We need to figure that out. So do not, when I say load balance or now balance, don't artificially balance to 100%. Balance to reality, identify gaps, but also look at, hey, maybe I think we need to be some trade-offs here. I said 40%, but now that I'm looking at all 4 quadrants, it's really 20%. And I need to move that over here. So take some time to rebalance. I see some people that might be on phones and things or driving. So please don't have an accident and then blame me or Expert Agile Club. So what you could do is just mentally do this, okay? So be safe out there. All right.